Okay, everybody, welcome to the BigBlueButton presentations from the 6th Developer Summit. It's held in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And as with all summits, what we do is we do a quick summary at the end of the week. We've had quite a lot of activity this week, so I'm going to go through probably just an update for you. I'll go through the common stuff in terms of the project, where we're at, the things we've done to date, and then some of the plans we've got moving ahead for BigBlueButton 1.0. and the upcoming releases, as well as touching on the HTML5 client. We'll be doing more of the HTML5 client. There'll be another presentation that will cover more details of the HTML5 client, but I'll touch on it here. As with all things, as I'm going through, you're more than welcome to type questions in the chat. There'll be lots of time for Q&A at the end, so let's get started. So this summit, we've had about 14 participants, all developers, all working together on the BigBlueButton client. Some of the folks here have come from the States, some from Brazil, some from Toronto, but we've all been together for just a week now and have been working on a number of items to improve the product, some of which I'll be sharing here. The BigBlueButton project has 6 core committers. These are the folks that are responsible for the quality of the project, for overviewing check pull requests that come in, for merging it, and responsibility for the architecture and growth. So just pointing out Richard Alam, he's a lead architect for the project. Richard is the one who started BigBlueButton back, I think, in like 2007. Felipe works with MConf as part of the client server development. Chad works with Blindside Networks on the client. Myself, Fred Dixon. Tiago works on the Red 5 project. Calvin Walton works on the record and playback. And you can see the folks here in the link below. There were a number of organizations that participated. A lot of the folks here that were in the summit. One second. A lot of the folks that were here were part of these organizations. So Blindside Networks, Host BBB, ICES Corporation, Seneca College, and MConf Technologies. These are all active people in the BigBlueButton ecosystem. So just talking about BigBlueButton, the background for it is there's a huge trend towards online learning. There are about 4,500 degree granting institutions in North America alone, about 25,000 secondary schools. To a lot of extent, they're moving online, some more than others, and there's a huge benefit, obviously, for the students to get access to learning, high quality learning from anywhere in the world. So when you think about synchronous learning, web conferencing, what open source solutions are there? And that's really the goal that BigBlueButton has had to provide. So what drives us is that we believe every student with a web browser should have access to a high quality online learning experience. And we intend to make that possible with BigBlueButton. That's what drives us. And BigBlueButton, of course, is open source. We're using BigBlueButton today for the presentation itself. The history of BigBlueButton, it actually started in 2007 at Carleton University. There's a link to our website, bigbluebutton.org, where you can see a history of it. There are 3 use cases that we look at: one-to-one, which is online tutoring, student coaching; small group collaboration, which is a group of people coming together, usually less than 10, sharing webcams, microphones, collaborating back and forth; and then one-to-many, where there is usually a teacher teaching the students may not have their microphone active. And we say 50 users or less, but that's not hard-coded. BigBlueButton goes up 51, 52, and so on. But general guidance, if we're ever asked how many users can a single session support, we say 50 users or less. In BigBlueButton, there's the core sharing of audio, video, slides, chat, and desktop sharing. You can use a layout manager to lay out different views. So here's an example of 4 webcams being shared. Here's an example of 9. Another example of 9. So this would be an example of a collaborative scenario where people are coming together, sharing their webcams, sharing their microphones. And recordings are made available in BigBlueButton as well. So after the session's done, students can come back, usually through the front end and LMS or that, and they can access the recordings through this webcam view here. They can see the presentation and the chat. We have a number of videos that are up on our website too to help users with understanding how to be a presenter, how to be a moderator, a viewer. And there's also a video too of just simply hooking up the desktop, hooking up the microphones to a BigBlueButton, which is good because there's different types of microphones and different ways they can be connected. So we have a video that just walks you through it. I want to talk about growth of the project. I always look at this. Facebook, we have over 4,000 likes now. Twitter, we have over 2,500 followers. I always like to say it's all organic, no special preservatives. We didn't pay any money to follow us. We didn't pay anybody to like us. It's kind of silly to do that. There's a very active community on GitHub. So the project's been forked by over 2,400, actually almost 2,500 GitHub accounts. We have lots of documentation on the developer side. And of course, the code is open source. It's hosted on GitHub. Our developer mailing list now has over 1,900 members. And you can see this is a graph that we get from Google Groups. It's pretty active each month. In terms of the community, the localization is done all by the BigBlueButton community. There are a number of languages that have over 90% coverage. You can see them in BigBlueButton. If you're logged in right now watching this presentation, you can see it in the lower right-hand corner. You can click on the pop-up menu, and you can choose different localizations. It's all on Transifex. It's all contributed by our community. As we add new features, we put the language strings up there, and our community localizes it, and we pull those localizations back into the product. So a lot of people, I think there's like 150 people who are members of the Transifex BigBlueButton group, and they all contribute in some way to the localization. The Developer Summit is a chance for the core developers to get together. So here's a picture from the Developer Summit we had in Porto Alegre in Brazil. This was 6 months ago. And here's a picture we took just a few moments ago. So this is the team that's here right now in Ottawa, Ontario, working away. And you can see us all together. And it's a lot of fun. We have a good time. We get a lot of stuff done. It's a chance for us to kind of coordinate as well where BigBlueButton is headed and what we can do to improve it so that it has the maximum benefit for our community and enables remote students to have a high quality online learning experience. So a couple of information I want to share. We've been running a survey on our demo server, demo.bigbluebutton.org. And in that, when you go to demo.bigbluebutton.org, there's a link in the chat that asks you to give feedback to the project. And when you exit the demo server, you're also brought to a Google spreadsheet or Google survey page. So here's some of the data that's come back. It's over 1,100 folks now that have responded. And we just asked them for very simple questions. One is we ask, are you in the educational market? So the people coming to the BigBlueButton website, about 70% of them are in the educational market. Not to say you can't use BigBlueButton for other markets. You'll see in a little while that many people have applied it to other markets, but the majority are in the educational market. We asked them their role. So you can see there's a pretty good cross-section between a developer, administrator, manager, student, teacher. And then we ask a number of two questions, basically. One is yes or no, does BigBlueButton meet your needs? And this number we're very happy with. For an open source project, for that cross-section of users, for over 75% to say that we meet their needs, I think is actually a significant accomplishment. We will never make 100%. I think if we did, the product would be so complex and so difficult. We always focus on the core use cases, which I talked about earlier, one-to-one, small group collaboration, one-to-many. Focus on the student, make sure they're having a high quality online learning experience with audio, video, slides, chat, and desktop. But this is good. Obviously, we're always looking to working on improving the product, which we'll share later some of our plans, but that's a good baseline to start with. And then we asked them just to rate us on a scale of 1 to 10. What did you think of the project? And you can see we have the majority, 7, 8, 9, 10. Again, it's good feedback, but it also shows that, hey, maybe there's some down here that we can add some more features to. We have a pretty good idea of the features people are looking for. And again, I'll talk more about it in a few minutes. One measurement of a project is how many people have decided to build upon your open source project. A lot of people built on top of MySQL. A lot of people built on top of Tomcat Nginx, and so on. So it's fair to ask at some point, how many people have built on top of BigBlueButton? We have a number of universities and colleges that have obviously used BigBlueButton to deploy. They're usually integrating with the LMS. There's a success story from Darren Ricketts on the that's linked from our BigBlueButton blog. A number of larger educational institutions now are deploying BigBlueButton. Here's an example of a quote from Marianne Duval, Senior Director of IT Higher Education for National University College Online. And they're very happy with BigBlueButton. The previous solution, Marianne states that they had over 50 support tickets per month. After switching to BigBlueButton, the number dropped to 6 or 7 tickets per month. That's really satisfying to see. Our goal is that, if you think about student-teacher learning, ideally the system just fades in the background and you just get on with the job of teaching and the students get on with the job of learning. New York University, and you can see this up on our website, they use BigBlueButton for the School of Professional Studies. Probably the biggest design win that we've had recently is the Defense Information Systems Agency. So I linked the article here, but in that article it states that the Defense Information Systems Agency expects to save at least $12 million a year with the rollout of its new Defense Collaboration Services, an online tool for secure collaboration between Defense Department users. If you read that article, that system is based on BigBlueButton. So just think about it for a moment. A very large government organization is going to expects to save at least $12 million a year using our open source project. That feels pretty good. There's lots of things we want to do, but when I think back 6 or 7 years when we started the project, if we could have achieved things like this, that would definitely be a milestone along the way. And I'm very happy to share that I think we've reached that milestone. And if these type of organizations going to build on top of BigBlueButton, we expect in the next year or two, there'll be many others as well. This is a huge win for us. In terms of other integrations, recently Schoology, they're a startup in New York that has raised quite a lot of money and is targeting the K-12 and higher education space with their own LMS. They have integrated BigBlueButton into their product. Canvas, a very successful vendor for providing learning management systems as well. I think they have over 1,600 customers now. They have embedded BigBlueButton in their product. On the open source front, Sakai, which is in use at some very large universities, there's a very well supported Sakai integration so that universities and colleges can embed BigBlueButton within Sakai. For the Moodle community, there is a very popular Moodle integration. You go to the Moodle website, you'll see it. If you set up a Moodle server, you can install it. When installed, it provides a BigBlueButton integration. Inside of Moodle is one of the plugins. A teacher or student can add it. They can set up a name, the welcome message, and there's some parameters. And then later on, there's another module called RecordingsBN that lets you access your recording. I just checked the stats. In the last 12 months, the BigBlueButton BN integration has been downloaded by Moodle sites over 100,000 times. So that's pretty good. Moodle is a worldwide LMS. It's been in use for over 10 years now. Great organization behind it. And we've tried very hard to make sure that there's a really good integration with BigBlueButton. And the community is certainly showing, based on the number of downloads, that they're using it. So I want to talk about the next release of BigBlueButton, which we're going to call 1.0. It's going to be our 13th release. When I look at where we've been, the last release was BigBlueButton 0.90. We did 17 months of the development cycle. And this is what we follow in our docs in terms of our development cycle. There's a dev segment where we do a lot of the design, the development. When the product reaches a beta where there's no major bugs and it looks as solid as we can make it for the developers, we put it up as a beta. Other members of the community can start using it. And then we go through iterations to just fix any remaining bugs that we can find. And we do that until we find that there are no major bugs left. Many times we're asked in the forum, what is your release date? We don't have release dates with the BigBlueButton project. We release on quality, not dates. And what we always say is you can tell how close we're coming to the release by where we are in the development cycle. A few weeks ago, we did the release candidate, which we had no more open bugs. And then after 2 weeks with the community using it, nothing was reported. We changed the label from a release candidate to release. And it was, I think, last week that we released 0.90. Very happy with it. It was a result of a lot of development and a lot of testing by the developers, commercial companies, and the community at large. And it's now done and released. So what are the things that we're looking at working on for BigBlueButton 1.0? Probably two main features that are in the queue. One is polling, which I have some screenshots. I'm going to share with you what it looks like. And the other is closed captioning for students with hearing impairment. We take accessibility very serious in BigBlueButton. For the last, I think, 2 releases, we've had an external company audit the accessibility of our product and put a statement up on our website saying what their judgment is of the accessibility. We already have support for screen readers using JAWS. So the support for closed captioning will be the sort of other leg, which those students with hearing disabilities will be able to fully participate in a session, and a cartographer or stenographer will be able to provide the closed captioning. And this will flow all the way through the record and playback. Some other updates we've done. The MConf team has provided us an update to the video doc. I've got some screen sharing. We've got some more discrete secure desktop sharing with TLS over Stunnel. So supplied by ICES. The MConf team have done the API updates and the webhooks as well. So a lot of these, if you've kind of watched the repository, a lot of these have been kind of waiting in the wings. But now that the release is done, sort of the merge window is open, where we're merging in some of these features that we've had done for quite a while, and they're now getting into the BigBlueButton core. So I'm going to walk you through some of these. There's lots of documentation now up on our website. If you go to docs.bigbluebutton.org, you'll see the new documentation website, which is pretty much editing and updating of the old documentation we had. A lot of the stuff that was no longer relevant got removed. A lot of it got updated. And it's now it's much faster for us to update the documentation here. In terms of the API updates, get meetings and get meeting info are the ones that are getting changed. So in terms of get meetings, what we've done is we've added lots of values that come back in the API call. I just took the table that's in the documentation. And this shows, actually, let me look back. Yes, so this shows for some of the values that have been added. Essentially what's done now is the get meeting and get meeting info would tell you a bit about the meeting, but the server actually knew much more, like how many people had joined listen only, how many people had joined with video, how many people were sharing their audio. So there's lots more numbers here that you can look at in terms of the activity in a session. And there's another table there. The details are all on the docs, like video count, listener count, internal meeting ID. These are the things you'll get back for each meeting now. So the same content is there. We've added more content for the API calls. Another feature which makes it easier to integrate BigBlueButton into other systems is webhooks. So there's now the ability through a package to install a webhook server that will allow a third-party application to register for callbacks from the BigBlueButton server. So for example, if a BigBlueButton meeting ends, we call it the destroy event in the server, the BigBlueButton server will send an HTTP request with an XML or a JSON payload to all the applications that have registered. So this allows you, in the past, you would have had to poll the BigBlueButton server a lot to try to infer when a meeting ended. So it would be there in one poll, but maybe 2 minutes later it disappeared. So at some point in that time it ended. This will allow you to register and get callbacks right away. And again, there's quite good documentation for it available on the website. And another piece that was added is just, we're always looking at making BigBlueButton more stable, easier to use, features, secure, and scalable in that order. So security, there's always things that are going on with each release to improve the security. We've added the ability to share desktop over TLS. So it's a secure sharing of desktop. Uses Stunnel, which is an open source tunneling server. Again, there's lots of good information there. Just go to docs.bigbluebutton.org. You'll find it in the labs section. This is where a lot of the work that's underway is in labs. And as the release gets closer to a finish, you'll see it move up into the sort of the main area of the docs. But there it's in labs. A lot of this stuff some of this stuff has been merged in already, and you can see the docs there. The video doc actually got a nice update as well. So previously, actually you can see it now if you're using it, they're kind of a window and interface. The windows have kind of disappeared, and it's now more of a clean tile view. So here's an example of 4 people sharing. This is what the video doc would look like on a small corner. Here it is sort of laid out. Again, what you're doing is you're seeing more of the webcams. You're seeing more of the video of the people. It's in a tighter space so that you basically get a larger image instead of having lost some of it to the windowing. And there's an example like a grid view. So you'll see this now in a lot of applications, like almost like a single video view of it, but these are clickable as BigBlueButton has had in the past. So you can click on it, make one window larger than the others. I want to talk about the polling module. For those of you that follow development of BigBlueButton, there have been instances of the polling in the past in the product. We were never quite happy with the way they got implemented. A lot of times we would do it, there would be other priorities, and in the last release there actually was polling pretty much implemented, but we didn't turn it on by default because, to be honest, we thought we could do a better job. So we've been working on a design for it, and I want to share the design with you. This again will go up on our website in the labs portion, and people can give feedback on it as well. So the idea with polling is to make it really simple. Minimize the number of clicks that a presenter has to do a poll. So here there's a new option for doing a polling. It's part of the presentation capabilities. So if you're a made presenter, you can upload slides, share your desktop, and do a poll. There's some pre-canned polls. The idea is that your slide might say, who was the first person to circle the Earth? There might be a couple choices, and you might be asking your students, well, what do you think? Well, now you could just basically say, look, there are 3 items on the slide. Before I tell you the answer, what do you think? And you can do a poll of A, B, and C. So if you choose, for example, A, B, and C, what'll happen is it'll immediately come up to a preview of what the poll will look like. So one click to choose a quick poll, and the second click would actually start it. If you look at the preview, this is what users will see. You could say, I want to make this allow multiple responses, or you could edit it. If you edit it, what we'll do is instead of taking you to fields and so on, there'll just be a text area. It'll be like Markdown, very simple. The first line is the question. The second line, third line, fourth line, and so on contain answers. And you can see I've got spaces in here, but with the quick polls, people can look to see what the formatting is like, and it's pretty obvious how it's formatted. This would allow you to have a poll, for example, you could cut and paste in. If you went to create a poll, it would just take you right to this one with a blank area. So if you make any edits to it, click preview, you would go back, you'd see what users would see. When you're ready, click start poll. Really straightforward. When you start poll, the users would see what you saw in the preview. So there would be the question followed by the answers. If it was you allowed multiple responses, instead of radio buttons, they'd be checkboxes. The users would see it, they click submit. This would appear on the screen of all users, everybody except the person providing the poll. In terms of the results of the poll, so the person who's providing the poll would see the results, and they'd see the results come back in real time. So others wouldn't see this yet, but you would, if you were the presenter, you would be seeing how many people can respond to it, what the total number of responses are to date, or to this point, and then the breakdown based on the questions. So we'll show you the aggregate numbers and also the percentage breakdown. At this point, we expect that a presenter could, for example, just let the poll go for a few more moments, talk about it, close it, may have no interest in sharing it with others. But if you do want to share it, one of the things we struggled a bit with the past was how do we get this into the presentation, especially when we want to minimize the impact on the clients, especially the HTML5 client as well. What we realized is if you took this as a graph and put it into, say, a PowerPoint document and saved it as a PDF and then uploaded it, that PDF would be visible to everybody in the presentation area, much like I've got a page in the presentation area here, and the presenter could talk about, annotate it, highlight things, and it would become part of the recording. So that's what we did. We basically figured out that we can create a template LibreOffice document that shows a poll results, and then modify the template so that it has the right values in the titles. So here, this would be a sample answers. We could then use LibreOffice to take this template, turn it into a PDF file, and now you can see where the rest of it is. We just tell BigBlueButton, process this PDF file and make it uploaded to the presentation as if the user had done it manually. But this all happens on the server. Once the user clicks publish, then a few moments later, the poll will be visible to everybody. It's part of the presentation. You can annotate it, gets part of the recording. That's what we want to do for polling. Really simple, really straightforward. There'll be Anton and the guys will be talking about the HTML5 client. We have been working on this for quite a while, actually over 2 years, and there have been a number of sort of stepping back, looking at the architecture. A lot of refactoring actually went into BigBlueButton 0.9. None of it was visible to users, but a lot of refactoring went into the back end to support more clients, specifically the HTML5 client. And this is a screenshot of what the UI looks like right now. And you can see it looks like BigBlueButton. There's a users window on the left, there's a presentation window, and there's the chat. This is HTML5. This is literally a screenshot a few moments ago from the current build of the HTML5 client. With features that are actually quite extensive, like record and play back. For those of you that follow the project, we did record and play back actually over 3 iterations. We're probably going to do the same thing with HTML5 client. We're not trying to duplicate everything the Flash client has in one shot in the HTML5 client. It would just be a long time before coming. And it's not necessary, because if we provide something that a student could use, so if they're on an Android phone, they're late for the class, or they're on the public transit, they can whip out the phone and connect. I say Android because we're using WebRTC for the audio and for the video as well. We are working on a native client for iOS. That will come later. Our focus has been on the HTML5 client. We're getting a lot more requests in our developer community for an HTML5 client than we are for an iOS client. We're doing both, but the priority right now is on the HTML5 client, so we can get something to the community as a developer build. And what that build will be is two-way audio and chat. This is not in place yet. We're working on it to view the desktop sharing. So this is what we would call our phase 1 release. This is the feature list we're targeting. You can view the presentation and you can advance slides as a presenter. So with that in place, you actually have enough where a student could be on a public transit away from their computer, and they could connect in and they would be able to participate in the session. And to the presenter, their name would appear on the users list just like anybody else. And like BigBlueButton, our goal is to never ask somebody, hey, can you see what I'm pointing at? The person on the HTML5 client would see exactly what everybody else sees on the screen. The one part that we won't try to do here is the webcam. We figured that if we can do desktop sharing, the person on the mobile device won't see the webcams, and we can do that in a later release, but that's not going to prevent them from participating in the discussion or following a lecture. So trying to come up with the minimum amount that we can get a release out that hits the widest possible use cases, and we can always iterate it. Basically here we're pragmatics. We do what works. And then after that release, which will come later this year, phase 2 would have two-way capabilities, more presenter capabilities, and phase 3 would basically have the full presenter and moderator capabilities. We're literally iterating it towards where it becomes parity with what the web-based client is right now. And the web-based client basically is a Flash-based client. But you're going to see both of them in play for going forward. And with the work that we did in the back end, doesn't matter which one you come into. If you can chat on one, in terms for some of the features, you can chat on both, and it goes back and forth. I want to talk then about the roadmap, just looking ahead. So there are still some core modules that we want to get in place. The ones we hear from are breakout rooms, shared whiteboard, synchronized video playback, and shared notes. These are all coming in the future, but you can see what we're working on for 1.0. There are a lot of other ones that get worked on as a side project or by a developer who's really interested in it, and they could land anytime in the core. For example, emote icons, thumbnails for recordings, faster desktop sharing, full screen support for the client, and support for ITLF languages. And we're always watching to see on our forums what people ask for. There's a pretty healthy list right now in our issue tracker that pretty much captures, I think, everything that's asked for that we think is worthwhile in the product. You'll find there's an issue, an enhancement request associated with it. I'll close with, this is a link to our documentation website at docs.bigbluebutton.org. Lots of information there now on the project. It's all up to date. You'll see stuff coming in for the next version in the labs area, so you can watch it. And as we're posting to BigBlueButton Dev with updates, we'll usually reference the docs in the lab so that there's up-to-date documentation for everybody. At this point, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions anyone has about the project. Okay. Sure, Kyle. Let me take it back. So these are all planned for some point in the future. No, not saying which ones will come which. We tend to just focus on finishing the current release, and that's all we really care about. So these are the ones that are beyond what's the closed captioning and the polling. These are things that we can see in the future. Other questions? Okay, if you have any other questions, just feel to type them in the chat. Okay. Then I wish to just say great to see everybody who comes out. I recognize some of the names. The recordings for this will be available. I'm going to stop the recording.